Evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country, which caused prices to be higher than ever before, making life unaffordable for millions and millions of Americans. This happened during a Democrat administration, and it's when we first began hearing the word affordability. Our border was open, and because of this, our country was being invaded by an army of 25 million people, many who came from prisons and jails, mental institutions, and insane asylums. They were drug dealers, gang members, and even 11,888 murderers, more than 50% of whom killed more than one person. This is what the Biden administration allowed to happen to our country, and it can never be allowed to happen again. We had men playing in women's sports, transgender for everybody, crime at record levels with law enforcement, and words such as that just absolutely forbidden. We had the worst trade deals ever made, and our country was laughed at from all over the world. But they're not laughing anymore. Over the past 11 months, we have brought more positive change to Washington than any administration in American history. There has never been anything like it, and I think most would agree. I was elected in a landslide, winning the popular vote and all 7 swing states and everything else, with a mandate to take on a sick and corrupt system that really just took the wealth from people and crushed the dreams of the American people. For the last 4 years, the United States was ruled by politicians who fought only for insiders, illegal aliens, career criminals, corporate lobbyists, prisoners, terrorists, and above all, foreign nations, which took advantage of us at levels never seen before.
Hello, welcome to a special edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about Trump's big address to the nation, folks. He addressed the nation like over an hour ago. And it was kind of an anticlimactic speech, to be honest. I mean, the White House is really hyping up this thing. And for the most part, the speech ended up being Trump struggling to read off a teleprompter properly, but there was some good substance there, so I want to break it all down. But before we get into it all, I want you to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever the hell you listen to this amazing audio experience. I would greatly appreciate it. So yes, as you heard at the beginning of the podcast, I played a clip, or maybe 2 clips. Trump addressed the nation, and like I said, the White House is really hyping up this thing. And I sort of thought it was smart. I agree with this idea of sort of addressing the issue of affordability, inflation, bragging about the accomplishments of the administration. I think that's a good concept. And considering the lackluster election results for Republicans from last November when we got destroyed in New Jersey, got destroyed in Virginia, got destroyed in many of the other elections that took place. I mean, hell, in Virginia in the AG race, you had a Democrat candidate who's practically a wannabe serial killer who won by like 5 points over the Republican. A Republican who was the incumbent, by the way. I mean, that's how poorly Republicans literally lost to a Democrat who bragged about wanting to kill his Republican opponents in government. We lost to this maniac. Okay, it just shows you how poorly Republicans did this past November in the off-year elections, and that's not a good sign for the midterms that are coming up next year. So I think it's smart for the White House to send Trump out because he's good at motivating, at the very least, he's good at motivating his voters to go out and vote. And Trump's usually good at framing issues or defending his record. He's usually pretty good at it. And like I said at the beginning, and from what I played, the substance was pretty good. I mean, just to mention the describe the topics that he talked about without getting to all the details. I'm not gonna play the whole speech. But some of the main topics he talked about was immigration. He made it clear that the Biden administration, they had a ridiculous open border. It was insane. Like they were letting everyone come through. It's basically like a hooker you see at like 1 a.m. in the poorly lit parking lot. They'll just let anyone come in. That's basically what Joe Biden's border was. Basically like a whore. Not to be too graphic. If you have children listening to this podcast, maybe you shouldn't let your children listen to it. But that's what it was. I mean, that's how ridiculous the border was. Totally open. No protection. There was no protection at the border. Again, just disgusting. And maybe we're not talking about the border anymore, but but Trump made the point that, the Biden administration, they made excuses about the border by saying that we need legislation. We can't fix the border without legislation. That's what the retards in the Biden administration were saying, that we need legislation. Where's my ice cream? That was Joe Biden. That was our president for 4 years, this retard. Pardon my language. But as Trump showed, we didn't need legislation. We needed a new president. And Trump used that line. It was a very effective line he used at the State of the Union earlier this year. And he used it again during his speech. I thought it was effective. He talked about the economy. I think he started off the speech by saying that he inherited a mess, which is true. I mean, the Biden administration was a terrible administration. It's the reason why Trump's back in office, because of how poorly the Democrats handled the economy and just the world in general during Trump's 4-year absence. And Trump talked about the cost of living, and Trump made claims about prices going down in certain areas. Some of the claims he said, I'm not sure are actually true. Like, I think some of the stuff he said about like the cost of turkey being down, referring to our Thanksgiving from last month. I'm not sure that's actually true, to be honest, that turkeys were much more inexpensive than the Biden years. I'm not sure that's actually true. But some of the stuff he said, let's say about gasoline prices, that is true. I mean, energy costs have gone down, and it's part of the reason you haven't seen a massive spike in inflation, even with the tariffs. It's because the Trump administration has been effective at getting energy costs down. And if you have energy costs down, that's usually a big factor in prices because it's so important. So when energy costs go down, usually prices go down, or at the very least, they stabilize. So that was good to emphasize. He talked about the tariffs. Now, I'm a fan of tariffs in principle, but I got to be honest, as I've talked about on the podcast many times, I'm not the biggest fan of how he's actually implemented some of these tariffs or the purpose of some of these tariffs. It seems to me that the purpose of a lot of these tariffs is to be used as basically de facto sanctions to punish countries that we don't like. Like, for instance, he put tariffs on India, and the reason he put tariffs on India, it was not to revitalize industrial policy or to help our industrial base. It was because India is buying oil from Russia. And Trump's not happy with Russia because they've been refusing to end the Ukraine war. Okay, maybe that's the right way to look at it. Maybe it's not. I would blame Europe more for this war continuing, but you can blame Russia. They are the ones who invaded. So that, that critique is not in and of itself invalid. But why the hell are we putting tariffs on India because they're buying Russian oil? Who cares? That doesn't help us. Doesn't help us at all. So I'm not a fan of using tariffs as basically a form of sanctions. Now, he talked about the fact that we've brought in all this revenue. Our trade imbalances have been almost completely corrected. We no longer have these massive trade imbalances, these trade deficits. Now, I will say, again, with trade deficits, it really depends on what the tariffs are doing. Because a trade deficit in and of itself is not inherently bad. For example, anytime you buy something from a grocery store, you are at a deficit, right? Because you're giving them your money and you're not getting money back. So in a sense, that's a trade deficit. But you're benefiting from it because you're getting goods from a grocery store or you get services from another business. So in that sense, a trade deficit is not inherently bad. The problem with our trade deficits is it's been at the cost of losing manufacturing jobs. And the problem of losing manufacturing jobs, it's devastated blue-collar workers across the country. It's one of the biggest reasons you've seen suicide rates among blue-collar men dramatically escalate ever since the 90s, because Bill Clinton signed NAFTA, one of the worst agreements to ever be signed by a president. Okay, just awful. It destroyed our manufacturing base, and it is one of the reasons why alcoholism has increased, drug abuse has increased. It's because a lot of these good, high-quality paying jobs where you didn't need a college education, they were shipped out overseas. And you had trade deficits in response to that. And that's when a trade deficit is bad, because it's a sign that we don't have the jobs in our country. But if the trade deficit is the cause of, let me be more clear. If you're able to get rid of the trade imbalance, if you're able to equalize it because you're bringing jobs back and you're having to buy less stuff from other countries, that's good. However, if you're equalizing the trade imbalance because you're simply using the tariffs as a way to punish countries that are doing things in the international system you don't like with India, for instance, buying Russia oil, then the trade imbalance, that imbalance no longer, that deficit going away, it's not that important then, because you're not actually bringing jobs back. You see what I'm saying? So like when Trump brags about these trade deficits being equalized, I mean, that's good in a sense, but the tariff policy hasn't been as focused on industrial policy as it should be. So that doesn't mean that much to me. But, it's a good talking point to talk about these trade deficits going away, so I understand why he did. The other thing he focused on was housing. He announced that there's going to be new housing reforms in 2026. That's smart. Housing costs across the country are ridiculous, and not enough states are building new homes. It's part of the reason why, it sucks to live in California. They're just not building homes because of all these ridiculous regulations. Okay? And frankly, even some liberals are aware of this. People like Ezra Klein from the New York Times. He famously did the book about abundance. And a lot of liberals and a lot of far left people got mad at him because it was basically a defense of capitalism and talking about how abundance lowers costs, lowers prices, and if you build more homes, it'll likely lower housing costs, which is true. That's just basic economics. So, because like I said, the housing market's just way out of whack. So Trump talking about how we have to do, major housing reform, that was good. Trump also talked about that he's going to be giving over $1,000 bonuses to all our U.S. soldiers, I think in part being paid by the tariffs. That's politically pretty smart and savvy. So there was a lot of good to the speech. And like I said, he stayed on message. He made it clear that the reason for inflation wasn't caused by his administration, it's caused by the Democrats. The economy was bad when he got into office. That's why he won the popular vote and won all the 7 swing states, which of course he had to brag about. Anytime he gives any type of speech, he has to throw in the line that I won the popular vote by 2 million votes. Probably more, but there was probably fraud, but I won anyway. Too big to rig. I won all the swing states, all the 7. Amazing. Trump always has to say that in these speeches. It's hilarious, but also a bit unnecessary, but it's okay. But for the most part, he was on message. Now, there was some bad, and mostly about his delivery. I did not think he looked particularly good. The orange makeup just does not hide the wrinkles like he used to. He has too many wrinkles now. It just doesn't hide it. And he didn't sound very good. He sounded rushed. He almost sounded nervous, which is sort of weird. I mean, I played the clip at the beginning. You tell me if you think he sounded nervous or not. To me, he sounded a bit nervous. And he made a lot of mistakes. He made a lot of, he wasn't reading the teleprompter quite right. There were several times where he was clearly trying to make up for the fact that he read a word wrong. And then he would go off the teleprompter to try to fix it. It was one of the weirder deliveries I've seen of him recently. And again, you would think this wouldn't be a problem, given his history. I mean, he's such a public figure, but he came across almost a bit nervous. And the delivery it was a little erratic. I wasn't impressed with the delivery. I mean, again, this isn't substantive critique, but when you're giving a major address to the nation, this stuff does kind of matter. And yeah, he didn't look that good and he didn't sound that good. And he did a very poor job on the teleprompter. Again, he's never been the best on a teleprompter, but I was just not impressed with his performance. And I bring this up to point out that this could be a problem for the Republicans going forward. And the problem is Trump's age. Now, I don't see any cognitive issues with Trump like Biden had. I want to be very clear about that. But I do think this address to the nation is a sign that he's not going to be able to use his charisma in a way he's been able to use in the past. Right? I just don't see that. I don't think he's going to be able to give rallies as effectively as he used to. So I think him, going across the country for the 26 midterms, I don't think that's going to be as effective as it was maybe in 2018 in terms of saving the Senate, because I just don't know if Trump has the energy for that, and I don't think I don't think his charisma is quite there anymore. Because again, his delivery tonight was rough. I was not impressed. Now, granted, Trump's never been as good on a teleprompter, like I said. This was a more serious speech. At his rallies, they're much more, free flowing, and maybe he did do a rally in Pennsylvania this last week, and he seemed much more comfortable. But his age is something that we have to keep an eye on. Not from a cognitive standpoint. Cognitively, he seems fine, but in terms from an energy standpoint, in terms of how effective he can be on the campaign trail. Campaigning for other Republicans, I don't know. This address sort of made me nervous that he's not going to be able to use his charisma to promote his agenda in a way that he has been in the past. Just something to keep an eye on. So, and another thing I didn't like about the speech, he started bragging about the military and how powerful it is. The reason I don't like that is because we're clearly escalating things in Venezuela. I mean, his chief of staff admitted that we're trying to pressure Maduro out by having all these battleships and, with all these war plans being developed in Venezuela. It sucks, but I think, it's just a sign of it. And I don't like it when he brags about the military. So, yeah, decent speech. He also talked about, ending wars in Gaza. The striking. He also bragged about bombing Iran, which is something I also don't like. So there was some bad stuff in there, but for the most part, when it came to the economy, cost of living, housing, immigration, it was pretty on message. It was a good reminder for folks that Trump inherited a lot of these problems, and while he hasn't fixed it, I think it was good for Trump to make clear that he's still trying to. He also made a point that some of the new provisions in his tax bill for the Republican bill that was passed this year, those provisions are going to take effect in 26. And hopefully people will realize and see the benefits of that before they go to vote in the midterm. So, decent speech. It was not well delivered. Again, I think Trump's starting to show his age a bit, but for the most part, it was on message. And, it's really the best he can do at this point. So, anyway, not a bad speech, but a little anticlimactic, Just his delivery was not that great. But on the substance, I would give it about a B, maybe a C+, 8 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10. Good but not great. Good but not great. But anyway. So that's it for today, folks. Again, please subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Wherever you listen to this podcast, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you are listening on YouTube, please like and comment. It helps with the algorithm, and I greatly appreciate it. We should be back tomorrow, folks. Hope you have a good night. Bye-bye.